Carla from MindPlore with Carla and Friends. And I am really excited to talk today because on Tuesday, we had a group of women who spoke about accepting and balancing emotions. Now, men are a little different with this. And because of that, I wanted to do a day with women and a day with men. And it's kind of scary what may come up right now. Not scary, it should be fascinating. What's going to come up right now about men and women and emotions. And just so you know, this is also streaming on YouTube at Google Fest University, and you guys will have that link in a moment. Having said that, I would love you guys. I'd love Jeanne. Well, first of all, I want to remind you, I have Neville here, who is always fun to have, and I never know what's coming out of him until it comes out.
Me too.
And I have Kamran Rizvi, who you guys know, and I also have Jeanne, Locke, Alford here, who is substituting for Allison because we have no idea with everything that's been going on when she will be returning. So I would like to ask Jeanne to take over so I can get everything in the chat that needs to be there for you guys and get it out to the world a little more. So Jeanne, go ahead, and remember it's the time for these two to talk the most.
Oh, of course. So as you mentioned, we had Girl Power talking about accepting and balancing emotions. And it was a really good conversation. I'm looking forward to this conversation. And I found two new quotes that I'm going to share. One is from an author, Carla Riechman, who wrote The Language of Emotion. And she said, if you can learn to see your emotions as tools of your deepest awareness, you'll be able to move forward as a whole and functional person. I thought that was really important to share. And then I found a quote from a great American contemporary philosopher. He's known as Arnold Schwarzenegger. And in his book, Arnold, he wrote, now, if I catch myself holding back an emotion the way I used to, I work on bringing it out. I try to make myself more responsive. And I thought that was a good one to share with this Guy Power Day. So with that, I'll kick it over to you guys. We want to talk about how, and we've touched on it a little bit through there, how when we're making changes and we're starting to see our emotions, that sometimes the people around us pull us back. So it's hard to integrate the new learnings and move forward. So balancing the emotion, accepting the dark emotions with the light emotions and integrating them, as the author Carla Riechman said, you can move forward as a whole and functional person, and that takes effort. So learning to balance and accept and move forward is kind of the theme. So Neville, let me kick it over to you. What does that mean to you? And how do you interpret that?
It's interesting, really. Has anyone ever read the book Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus? Because
a while
probably,
ago.
Yeah, it was a while ago. I only read it once, and once was probably more than enough, frankly. It just said that we're different, and men are very different to women. Actually, we do.
That is, by the way, breaking news. I just want to highlight that.
Oh, absolutely. Well, could we have a breaking news on the caption? Because yeah. Anyway, back to reality. Men don't typically show their emotions. And there's been this huge change that's been brought about by COVID, that's brought the emotional nature of us all, not just men, but women as well, and how we need to talk to each other to keep away and from depression and that mental agility that we talk about all the time. And again, coming from the UK, I get this on the news all the time. But the royals, both royals, when they were talking to each other, both young royals, when they were talking to each other before one emigrated to America, were talking about this mental health. And interestingly enough, they both come from the army, different parts of the army, or one was the Air Force, one was the army. And even then they said, it wasn't this stiff upper lip of the British. It's a man thing of not showing your emotions. But the reality of life is if we don't show our emotions in the depths of arena, we do go into some form of despair. And COVID brought that out for everybody, where everyone was working from home. There was no real connectivity with the office or with friends. And it became very tough. But I found that well-being has come out of this in the corporate sector now. They talk about staff, employee well-being a lot, which I think it's about time we started to talk about these very fundamental things about being human beings. So, yeah, we are different, but deep down, we do go through very similar emotions. Well, that's what I found anyway.
Oh, it is true, and I do remember the book, and I have a friend who specializes in male and female communication, and she often will say, it would be better if we spoke different languages, because as it is, we use the same words and they often mean different things. But I've been very thankful for William and Harry for their open discussions, from being, royals that everybody listens to, for their open discussions about mental health, well-being, and such, because I think it is important. And I want to thank you for this, just this second, for giving us at least one positive that might have come out of COVID, so that we start to talk to each other.
Let's hope so.
Yeah, Kamran, how does that, what does that bring up for you?
Yes, I mean, what Neville said reminded me of this cliche, men don't cry. And I remember once interacting with the CEO, and I, out of the blue, asked him the question, when was the last time you cried? And, he was kind of stumped, and that's a weird question. I said, hold on a second. It's a very real question. Are you telling me that you've never cried? So he reflected and said, well, if you put it that way, of course I have. I'm human. I said, oh, fine. What was the occasion? Don't have to go into the details, but can you recall the occasion and what was causing you to feel that way? And he said that when I'm torn between work priorities and my family commitments, and I don't know what to do, I go into the bathroom and I cry. And I said, what happened subsequently? He said, I feel relieved. so that is one recollection that I do want to share. And I think, yes, it's very true that even I, as a man, have had great difficulty expressing my emotions in my early years. And in the last 7 to 10 years, I must say that I have, when I saw the title, Accepting and Balancing Emotions, I felt that this was very apt, because the word balance suggests that there is a wobble in life. And it only when there is a wobble that you need balance. And the wobble is between emotions which are, let's say, joyful, curious, inquisitive, loving, or violated, jealous, furious, provoked, withdrawn. So these are, we as humans are feeling beings. And as feeling beings, it's very, very true that all kinds of feelings will come our way, some that we desire and others that we don't. But they will come our way because being alive truly exposes us to all kinds of experiences which trigger a variety of emotions within us. And this accepting and acknowledging these emotions is hugely important. And it reminds me of another metaphor, which is that of an artist and a color palette. So in his one hand, he has this palette of colors. Those colors to me are emotions. And the artist is not only accepting those colors, but is balancing them in order to create visual that is a reflection of what's in his or her mind. And I feel that in recognizing our own emotions, we can make our lives so much better in terms of relationships. Because when we honestly communicate what we are feeling to our partners and our colleagues, it builds a bond which is much stronger because it requires a candor. It requires us to put our egos aside and acknowledge that I'm feeling bitter or humiliated or let down. Because unless you state that, you'll come across as a very cold, insensitive monster. So it's important that you show your vulnerability. It's not easy to do it. And I do recall that in a marital situation, the husband also was struggling, and he was advised that when you meet your wife next time, let her know exactly what you have felt. Do not blame her for it, but let her know what you have been feeling. And he took that advice and sat her down and literally spoke to her and said, lately I've been feeling rejected, I've been feeling distant, I've been feeling let down, withdrawn, in fact, furious at times, jealous. And the lady listening to him was in a state of shock. Have I caused all this to you? And he said, no. I just wanted you to be aware that this is what I've been feeling. And it brought them closer to each other. So acceptance and sharing of what one is feeling and having the vocabulary to be able to pinpoint the emotions you're experiencing at any given time is vital. It's, emotional literacy, as Daniel Goleman talks about. If I'm not able to express what I'm feeling, then I will not be able to put across a cogent idea in an effective manner. And I feel that in music, you find that there's a very strong interplay between the notes and the highs and lows in whatever genre you're listening to, and the emotions that you experience. Some sounds evoke the pathos in us, the very sad and very melancholy kind of factors. And other songs make us joyous and excited and inspired. So there's a lot to be said for emotions, because without emotions, I feel our life is tasteless. And if there is no taste, there is no reason for living, really. And we want to take the good with the bad and understand that whatever is happening to us, it's really helping us appreciate the other side. So if I've never seen sadness, I'll never know joy. If I have never seen anger, I'll never know calm. So it's really one of those things that we need to accept and indeed balance.
Thank you. I like the idea that you brought up painting, but then you also talked about spices and such. So, two pictures jumped in my mind. Of the painter in front of the canvas is just as important in this as a metaphor as the chef with that palette of spices, thinking a pinch here and a pinch there, and that makes all the difference in whatever you're concocting on the stove. You can fry an egg with just regular oil, or you can fry an egg in bacon fat with a little salt and pepper and a touch of garlic, and they're two very different experiences. And I often will tell people that, if you draw a picture of just a circle on your paper, you have a circle. But when you start to shade in the back edges of the circle and add darkness to it, it becomes a sphere. It's more three-dimensional. And that's how I see emotions making us who we are. We are three-dimensional beings. Who knows? We might be five-dimensional beings. I just don't know what the fifth dimension really is.
Parallel universe.
Could it also be consciousness? Because many times we are not aware consciously of what keeps us alive and what moves us in any direction. I'm wondering what Kamran, I want to hear what you have to say, Jeannie, but I'm wondering what the guys have to say about that.
Why don't you start with Neville?
Now we're starting with Kamran.
Who's consciously aware of what's going on, by the way.
Yeah.
we do touch on this subject from time to time, don't we? Conscious behavior and unconscious behavior. And it's a fact, actually, Carla. It's a fact that when things are going really well, we don't have to be conscious because they're going really well. They're moving along fine. But it's when things aren't going very well, all of a sudden, our subconscious mind kicks in. And that's the habit forming. And unfortunately, a lot of us haven't got a very healthy subconscious mind, I'm afraid. It's as simple as that. And when it comes to, I suppose, if we think about anything we do, what our research over many, many years has shown, and lots of others have agreed with us and done the similar research, is that there are four elements that are constantly going on in anything you do. It's how we think, how we feel, what drives us, and how we're connected with other people. So no matter what's happening, whatever project you're doing, whether you're having a conversation with something else, all of those four elements are acting. And Kamran said it, when this guy spoke to his wife and laid out how he felt, her first reaction wasn't a thinking reaction, wasn't a connectivity reaction, and it certainly wasn't driven by an inner purpose. It was her feelings that were hit immediately. And we forget that this is the first thing that kicks in. It's a bit like it's the first gear. And if you get in that first gear and you don't actually get out of that first gear, you're stuck in your emotion. Whereas if you're in that first gear and you're in an emotion of elation, you automatically take the second step into the second gear and off you go. But if you're in an emotion that's very negative, you get stuck. And then you need someone to kick you up the backside, or you need support to help you get out of it. And unfortunately, this is with the men from Mars, women from Venus. For many, many years, that chief exec, Kamran, his only option was to go into his executive bathroom with his key, lock the door, and cry. Because he daredn't show his feelings in front of the rest of the board. Not only was it not manly, but it wasn't leadership either. It was showing weakness. And I'm really thankful that at last we're growing up in the world that's saying this isn't showing weakness. This is just showing that we're frail and we do need support. But it's a fascinating arena. So over to you, Kamran. Are you in an unconscious state or conscious state?
Now I am in a conscious state.
Now you put your mic on. You're in a conscious state. Yes.
Yes. And as you were speaking, I just realized that there is another expression, another cliche. Don't get carried away.
Oh goodness, yeah.
Yes, Neville, Jeanne, I
Yeah.
mean, I'm sure you've heard this before. Don't get carried away. Now, you could get carried away to the skies or into the depths of the ocean. And to me, practically speaking, consciousness kicks in when you realize that never make a promise when you're happy. Because when you're happy, skies, there are no limits. And you can commit to something that when you rationalize later consciously, you realize, oh my God, what did I do? And likewise, when you are sad or angry, never decide. Because if you do, you will live to regret that decision. Again, it's being carried away by emotion. So I think consciousness needs to kick in, as you rightly said, particularly in moments of high emotions, whether they are on the flip side or on the high side. One just needs to be very, very aware of what one is feeling. And therefore, the title to me is perhaps very appealing, the accepting part. And accepting means acknowledging, being aware, being mindful of the state that you're in at any given time, and knowing where is the equilibrium. Because I feel that people make better decisions, are much more measured in their stance. They're not reckless, yet they're very inspiring and adventurous. But look at a circus act. I mean, it's all very emotional. Cirque du Soleil is such a great example.
Mm.
I mean, the flair, the art, the choreography is superb.
Mm.
And there is that balance in that. And if you took out the emotion, the whole act would flop. And the act is about feelings. It's about ecstasy, in fact. But that is where the balancing act is coming in, because I feel we are blessed with the resource we call emotions. Imagine, you remember the Star Trek, Neville and Jeanne? There was a character who couldn't understand emotions.
Data.
Irrational. Yes. Yes. And people could relate to that. And because they could see themselves as Spocks, and a lot of men often got accused for being like that.
Yep.
Leave your emotions at home. You've come to work 9 to 5, you get paid. This is your job. Now get on with it. And don't show me your moods. And that is not how things work. And I'm very glad that emotions have come in the corporate arena as a very real factor of energy and movement. Because when you're inspired and motivated and passionate, look at the times the word passionate has been used in business. Passion for this, passion for that. That is how one is able to energize the whole system. Because when you acknowledge the emotion, otherwise we are robots, just rational, insensitive morons, pardon my French.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because I call an entrepreneur with no emotion a robot.
Exactly.
Because they're just going through the motions. And I've never met an entrepreneur that didn't have passion.
Yes.
They are so passionate. In fact, almost passionate to the point where you can't shut some of them up. but that just means that that's going back to your first point about going too far. Really, they need to remember they've got 2 ears and 1 mouth, and use them in that proportion.
Absolutely.
But it's a fascinating subject, because I just want to talk about consciousness for the moment, okay? Because in a conscious world, when we're all very controlled here. We're smiling away. We're not, whoa, and we're equally not going. Okay, so we're in this controlled arena where we're all quite calm. And when you're at that time, if I were to give you 2 ladders out of choice, a happy ladder and a sad ladder, which one would you choose? Happy. Common sense, isn't it? Yeah. So why do people get sad? Because it doesn't come from a conscious choice. Yeah. It comes from where they've been, the habits. But consciously, they'd go up the happy ladder. And that's what I find fascinating about the 5 inches between your ears. Because when you realize it, really realize it, not just read the book and spout it out, but when reality hits home, you realize it's all down to you. It's completely your choice. And you can say no, and you can say yes. And it's entirely up to you. But not many people realize that.
True.
Yeah, Stephen Covey wrote about that when he said between the stimulus and the response, you get to choose.
Yep.
And like your two ladders, I usually ask when I bring that up, I say, do you choose heaven or do you choose hell? Do you choose peace or do you choose chaos?
And consciously, there's no option, is there? Let's face it. But unfortunately, our world revolves around the subconscious. So we've got to work actively in the conscious to change our subconscious.
Now, how does, go on.
Go on, you're going to ask a question, so don't stop.
Yeah. How does the subconscious, now, how does the conscious get aware of the subconscious so we can stay in that happy state? I've been listening to a lot of Abraham Hicks. Get into your happy vortex. And I'm like, I am in no mood to be in my happy vortex, but I know you're right. And I sort of put myself there, but I know that I'm not really there. How do I get my subconscious to know that you're totally off? Shut up. And let's move into the happy vortex because I really need to be there.
Well, it's another thing that people struggle with, I'm afraid. It's called awareness because they're not very aware of where they are. And they need a map. So that they need a trigger or something that almost like a child going to walk closer and closer to a fire. Ultimately, you don't want that child to touch the fire, but some children will touch the fire because it will get hotter and hotter and hotter and they won't see danger. And it's the similar sort of thing between our conscious behavior and our subconscious behavior. We will go further and further and further in a subconscious arena. We'll screw up more and more. We'll get angry. We'll kick the cat. We'll throw the frying pan around the room. And then all of a sudden we go, what on earth am I doing? And that's your level of awareness. So you've gone up the sad ladder, the angry ladder, call it whatever ladder you like, but you haven't noticed you've gone up it. And this is about awareness. And, lots of people say about, happy thoughts, happy place. Peter Pan had a happy thought. His mother, that was his happy thought. And some people need that. I wouldn't know what that meant really because I don't need a happy thought. I just let something happen and it'll influence me.
Well,
but
I think sometimes we have to remind ourselves that at one point in our lives, we were children. And the lesson I learned from children is they process their emotions right on their sleeve, right out in front. And once it's processed, it's gone. It's done. So my lovely philosopher 2-year-old grandson throws a hell of a temper tantrum. He throws his arm up like this. He sinks to the ground. He puts his head down. He drags it across the rug. And, all along we're just looking at him because we know he's got to let this through. And when he gets done and he doesn't get the response he wants, he pops up, runs into his room, grabs a toy, and everything's fine. So it's the processing part that's important, because if we don't process it, what I learned over time is if there's an emotion that you don't process, if there's a hurt that you don't process, it sticks with you and it comes up in different ways. Hence, I often look up in the sky and go, okay, I've learned that lesson. Can I move forward now? We have to learn that lesson and then take a step out of it and move forward. And that takes consciousness and awareness and the ability to not worry what other people think, because it's only about you processing, because that helps you. It's like forgiveness. I'm often reminded that forgiveness is not for the other person. you're angry for some reason and you need to forgive, and that releases you from that negative emotion. And then you grow and you move forward. So becoming conscious of it, I think, is part of the secret to being able to balance. Because as you said, you don't know joy if you don't know sadness. There's no contrast, but processing it is something we don't often talk about. I mean, I remember somebody saying to me, you've got all this anger, you need to get it out. And I just looked at this person and I said, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you mean getting it out. And that's when there was the movement with the foam bats to, beat each other up. That didn't quite process it for me, but that was a mechanism or a tool to help people kind of get it out. Yeah.
Kamran's hand is up.
Thank you, Carla. Processing reminded me of Aristotle saying that everyone can be angry. That is easy. Everyone can be angry. I mean, I find that anger is the most honest expression that I know. Painful though it is, but it is the most sincere and honest expression. And then he goes on to say the processing part. But to be angry for the right reason, with the right person, at the right time, at the right place, in the right way, that is not easy. Because you want to process your rage and anger in a systematic manner. You want to learn that, hey, the red light is on and you're about to do something stupid. Because anger is semi-lunacy as well. I mean, because we are actually opening the lid to our consciousness and going crazy. And it's important to recognize that. And for me, the metaphor of a dashboard in a car is really very helpful. Because you'll see that there is an indication for brakes, there's an indication for oil, there's an indication for temperature, and all the other facets that are very necessary for a car to run. And these indications are there for a reason, that whenever those lights come up, now this is where consciousness must be triggered, and not the subconscious saying, oh yeah, it's the oil light, I'll get home and fix it. That is when things go wrong. If we are able to recognize what's happening and accept that, and have the courtesy of stopping and doing something about it, we are going to seize the engine, or the car will catch fire, and we will put our family or our friends at risk. So all of us do have an internal dashboard, I'm sure. And recognizing emotions, particularly the ones that can get us carried away in one extreme or the other, we need to recognize those light bulbs. And even the rev counter, it has 7,000 RPM, and you see the red coming up. Now, if you're pushing too hard, you're going to lose the race. I mean, the best example to me is Formula One. Formula One is optimum performance, and you've got to complete the 99 laps. It's not about winning the first 2, 5, 10, 20, 50 laps. It's about seeing the Grand Prix, the flag. And to do that, you've got to accept and balance and get to the destination. And if Formula One was not a hell of an emotional ride, I don't know what is. I've never met Michael Schumacher, but I'm sure Neville, with his network, he might have definitely met, because he meets golfers and God knows who else. So I just thought that these were some examples to be cherished and shared.
Well, you mentioned Formula One, and actually there's a Formula race this weekend. So if anyone gets the opportunity, go and have a look at it, because you would think that in this long race, the driver's emotions are cool, calm, and collected all the way through. Well, you'd be wrong, because every single corner, every single lap, something's happening. As you go round a lap, the fuel goes down in the car because you're using fuel. But that might put pressure on you near the end. You might not have enough fuel. So you've got to know how to use that rev counter.
Yeah.
And equally, I was listening to Lewis Hamilton, who is probably the coolest customer out there. 7 times world champion, more Formula One podium positions than Michael Schumacher. So he is like Mr. Number One. He's like Usain Bolt, really. And he was in the last 14 laps, which for some races can be very critical. Anyway, the guy in front pitted, but the guy in front of him didn't go in the pits, stayed out, using similar tyres to Lewis Hamilton. And it's all about tyre management. So they said, oh, we're going to pit you. So they brought Lewis Hamilton into the pits. Now, again, you have to realise with Formula One, this isn't just what lap are we on? They know exactly what lap they're on. They know exactly the fuel usage. They know the tyre degradation. They also know how hot the damn brakes are getting on any particular corner. So they have telemetry up the gazoo. I mean, you talk about big data. Well, they have big data over a 2-hour race. And they pitted Lewis Hamilton. And he came out of the pits, and he came out behind the person that he was in front of before he pitted. And he said, guys, why'd you pit me? What on earth are you doing? Who's dealing with the strategy here? Well, I can tell you, as Cameron just said, rage is the most honest emotion out there. Being angry, because it just comes. And the interesting thing is, you don't really want to stop it, because it's, as my mother always used to say, it's better out than in. If you bottle it up, believe you me, you're just bottling up something that's going to explode. And I think, Jeanne, you said the same thing. It'll explode sometime down the path, and you don't quite know when that's going to happen. But the other thing about emotions is, if you feel angry, feel it. Don't stop it. Just let it happen, because that's what you're feeling. So just going back to that husband that told his wife, this is how I feel. She was shocked. And she probably showed it in her face. If you feel the emotion, you get rid of it, and you know how to deal with it in future. And after a while, you don't bottle up the emotion, you use it. And that's the important thing, because you can use anger in a very forceful way, equally you can use sadness, happiness, and elation. And again, people that don't practice it don't understand it. They just keep going through life, and then someone says when they're in their 70s, well, if only you'd have done this. And you say, well, thanks very much, but that would have been really useful to know 60 years ago. Because my life would have been a lot easier.
It's true. And it's, many of us have heard, you shouldn't feel that way, as a way of somehow in our upbringing. And maybe one of the freest lessons, or lessons that made me feel free, was when somebody sat me down and said, you have your feelings. Nobody else can tell you not to have those feelings. Just feel those feelings. And I've learned over the years, when somebody says, I feel, I acknowledge those are your feelings. I'm glad you're sharing them, because they're very personal. The feelings that we have are very personal. There's nobody in this world that can describe them except for you. Your feelings are your feelings. And it was very difficult in my younger years when somebody that I loved very deeply said, you shouldn't feel that way. And I remember getting angry in the moment, which was an odd feeling, to recognize it at that moment, and saying, you don't get to tell me how to feel. You get to hear how I feel, but you don't get to tell me how I feel. And that changed that relationship quite dramatically, for the better, actually, because nobody can dictate how you feel. And that's part of balancing it and accepting it is recognizing that we have these emotions. And I'm sure there's some research out there, but I found that when I'm in certain emotions, what I see, what I interpret in my brain is very different than when I'm happy. It's like the difference between standard TV and ultra high def TV. In the early days when we moved to high definition TV, there was consternation because you could see every little pore and flaw in the face, and so they had to change lighting and make all these differences. When you're angry, you see that level in a very different way, and then you see the person again when you're happy and elated, and they're just beautiful. They have the Doorstay filter, so they're looking much younger and fresh and dewy. So it's you interpret your world through emotions, and I didn't realize that for many years. And when I had that moment of realization, I was like, oh my, that changes perspective in a very elemental way. So the idea of recognizing and then accepting and then balancing, maybe. What do you think, Neville?
Thinking on what you're saying, coming back to this balance bit, and interesting enough, in the corporate world for many years, we've talked about emotional intelligence. I've always struggled with those two words being put together because, frankly, I don't know of any emotion that's intelligent. If it were intelligent, it would know when to kick in, but it just kicks in. And in many respects, we can't stimulate it unless we stimulate something else to stimulate the emotion. So, for instance, fear. You climb a rope ladder up to a zip wire. There's nothing better for me. I mean, I'm excited, but a similar person could be climbing up the rope ladder on the other side, and they're experiencing a very similar brain chemical reaction, but it turns to fear. So what is it that I've got that's exciting and they've got that's fear? It certainly can't be intelligent, but it's probably got something to do with experience. And the bottom line is, I think we're all striving to do the best we can. I don't know anyone that goes into the office to deliberately fail, or deliberately into the workplace to fail. They may go and hide in a bathroom for half an hour and take a bit of time off, but they don't go in to fail. So we're all striving for something that you might call excellence. And as he talked about Aristotle earlier, there's a great saying from him: "Hey, we are what we repeatedly do." So excellence is not an act, it's a habit. And if we can get into that habit and channel our emotions, balance them, whatever way you feel right, so that you get the best from yourself, then you'll be in that excellence mode all the time. And from excellence, you can go to the next level. And I'm always very jealous of athletes, actually, because athletes know what this is all about. They've got a personal best. I was speaking to Carla about this on her show yesterday. So if you're doing the high jump, you know what your personal best is, and you're constantly trying to beat that personal best by making small adjustments. The same goes with the marathon runner and Usain Bolt. Look at Usain Bolt, huge guy, muscles galore, and he's up against his companion, which was a good foot smaller, but really stocky. And Usain Bolt only beat him by less than 1/10 of a second over 100 meters. So the makeup that we have individually, we need to make our own excellence. And that's what I say. I'm sort of jealous in a way that athletes have got this personal best. Cricketers, the same. They've got this personal best, so many 50s, so many 100s, so many not outs. And footballers the same. So anyone in the athletic arena has got that sort of added advantage. But the rest of us can take an example from them and just find out, if we can, what we think our personal best is. And then tomorrow, do one thing slightly differently and see if you can do it that little bit better. And if you can, imagine your emotions then. You know, Cameron's dashboard, it'd be off the scale, wouldn't it? You'd say, okay, well, we're going to start level now. We're just going to move it there today. It would be fascinating. But anyway, Cameron, you got your hand up. Something's triggered you.
Yes. You always trigger me somehow, Neville. And you have to say something which. Actually, that's what came to mind when we were speaking of emotions and accepting them and balancing them was the role that emotions play in memory.
Oh, yeah.
And, if you, I get people to write their own biographies as an exercise, a therapeutic exercise and a self-awareness exercise. And I say that, look, there's no difference really between you and a book. A book has a title, you have a name. And a book has chapters, your life has chapters, book contains information, your life contains information. The difference is the dynamism, that your information and data is very dynamic, whereas the book is static. What's there is there. It's the reader's interpretation that will be dynamic, but the content will not be shifting all the time. So why don't you write break your life into chapters. Like I am in my 12th chapter right now, which is 5-year span. So 0 to 5, 6 to 10, like that. And the best moments and the worst moments. And I would recommend our listeners in particular to do this exercise. Take a scrapbook, break your life into as many chapters by 5 years at a stretch from birth to 5 and so on. And then write your best and worst moments. You'll be surprised how much we recall. And those best and worst moments, when we interpret them, it shows how rich our life has been. I'm always fearful, Neville, Jeanne, Carla, of people who have never seen a downer, because it's the downers that make us strong.
Yeah.
It is when we are vulnerable that is proof of our strength. It is the insecure who do not open up and reveal their vulnerability. It's the strong who are able to open up. And frankly, we have interpreted crying as a sign of weakness, whereas it's true that it shows how much you trust the people you're with, that you can be yourself in their company, knowing that they will not abuse you, but they will come to you and connect with you and feel with you, which is an amazing bonding experience. So memory is what really is anchored in our emotions. And I feel that everything intellectual is there somewhere in the subconscious, but very hard to access. But ask yourself, what do you remember from your past? It's always those things that touched you the most. Anger, love, passion, anything of that sort. Your first birthday, or when you got your promotion, or the first kiss. Neville, you might remember the first kiss.
I'm older than you, Cameron, so no.
Anyway.
But you're absolutely right. The interesting thing is, what I found that a lot of very successful people do, they may not write it down as religiously they used to, but they reflect every day. They reflect on what's happened during the day, what they thought that was going to happen, how it perhaps didn't quite happen that way. Was it an improvement, or perhaps tomorrow I'll go back to the way I thought I was going to do it? And they also plan for tomorrow. And it is almost like writing it down, creating a diary. And again, I find a lot of women keep a diary. Young girls in particular keep a diary. And I think that's probably one of the best practices that you could ever do, because it's there, it's yours. I was interviewing a young girl in Pakistan. She just sat her year 11 exams, and wait for this, she scored 494 out of 505 potential marks.
Wow.
She was the top person in Islamabad. And I'm sure she'll be put on the TV and she'll be in the papers. Anyway, I was interviewing her and I said, first question, I said, how did it make you feel? And she turned around and said, my parents were so happy, it made me feel great. And I thought, at that age, that's the sort of thing I probably would have said. But in 10 years' time, it's going to be all about her, how it makes her feel. So there's a transition, as you say, Kamran. If you do it in 5-year chunks, you'll then see that transition in yourself and feel good about it. So, it's fascinating. This is a fascinating arena. It's a fascinating subject. Yes. But like anything else, the more you write down, it's a bit like going on a training course and coming away and never referring back to the notes.
Yes.
If you're lucky, you might have remembered 1%. But if you go back after a few days and you write down and you read the notes, make a few notes, and then after 2 weeks, you go through it again and make a few more notes. And then after a month, you go through it again and make a few more notes, then it will stick. Because it's practice, practice, and practice. So, but yeah, good. Very good subject today. Incredibly good subject today.
Thank you, Carla. Angie.
The point is, I know with me, I get stuck in my emotions. And I'm not sure how to get out of that. Now, listening back to Abraham Hicks, when you're in the happy emotion, stay in that happy place. But something every once in a while, even in the day, every once in a while, you slip down. And getting back up, it's not always as easy as you would think, because our emotions may be on a roller coaster, but who we are and our mind is, we're down, and we kind of ride it for a while. How can we turn this around? Someone last night did something very interesting. She asked me, how was my day? And I said, it's been up and down. And she said, Carla, can you vocalize a dog howling? So I howled. And I noticed as I howled, it was quite funny, the whole room, I was on Clubhouse and the whole room unmiked and began howling and making noises. And I saw immediately the emotions go from being down, because I was sort of in the middle and on a plateau at that moment, to going back up. And the question that comes to me, how do I remind myself to howl or do something really dumb and silly and know that that'll bring my emotions back up and hence put me in a higher vortex, allowing me to move forward?
Carla, so many people ask that question. And the interesting thing is there's so much research being done about this. I'm even more surprised on a regular basis that people don't know what research has been done. Because actually, there's really only 3 things you can do. So if you're recording this, great, so you don't have to write it down, but write it down, okay? What you have to do is break the cycle. So your level of awareness is really important. How you break the cycle, there's only 3 things you can do. One is do an activity, make a cup of tea, go for a walk, go for a run, go for a shower. So you are physically making a break. The second one, connect with someone else. If anyone watches Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, phone a friend. And tell that friend, get it prepared, have a list of friends, just say, if I phone you and I say the word banana, all you need to do is put the phone down and just let me holler for half an hour.
That's good.
Okay. So in other words, your friend knows, you just put it down. Yeah, I don't need to listen. You're just going to rant and rave. Not a problem. Okay. So that's the second thing. And the third thing, use your imagination and go to your happy place. And a lot of people don't have a happy place. But let me give you one really good example that I laughed my head off when I saw this very senior executive do it. She would get angry very quickly. It was just a habit that she got to. But when she got angry, she'd start shouting. And then she'd realize, oh dear, I'm shouting again. So she'd shot up the angry ladder. So we gave her some things to do. And she said, well, I need to take an action. I'm an action type person. And she said, tell me what action to do. And I said, that's useless. If I tell you the action, what to do, it's not your action, it's my action. So she stood up, walked around a room, and she said, in this particular office, there are squares of carpet, all different colors, about 2 feet square. And she said, okay, when I get angry, I'm going to go and stand on that square. And I said, you sure you want to do that? She said, yes, absolutely. Anyway, so I went outside and I'm talking to a few of her colleagues, and I can hear she slams the phone down. She suddenly realized she's got angry. And what did she do? She went straight to that square. And do you know what? She did that, and all the people around her, and I said, they all said, what's she doing? I said, she's going to the place where she's going to stop her anger. And they all said, thank God for that. Because when she storms out of her room, they all run for cover because they know she's angry and someone's going to get it. So as I say, there's 3 things you can do. Go to an imaginary place that you really feel serene and in control. Take an action or phone a friend.
Wow.
Very powerful, very powerful, or any one of those 3.
Wonderful.
And that's what, this was a room about manifestation. And someone said almost the same thing you did. And the person who opened the room said, yeah, in this room, we stay in our happy place. So Carla, how do you feel after you went, I said, you know what? I feel better. And as I was listening, I actually fell asleep for about 4 or 5 hours after that. I woke up and I was, oh my God, I fell asleep.
Well, that's a pretty happy place. You try going to sleep when you're angry.
You can't.
Good luck. Good luck.
Kamran, your hand was up.
Yes, I just wanted to, because I just noticed we are 9:30 and you always ask for concluding remarks. So I just wanted to say the good news and the breaking news and the good news is that the only person you can control in life is you yourself. So by accepting and acknowledging your emotions, you can make your life and the lives of those around you so much richer, better, and more connected. Accepting emotions and not fighting them is the way to go, because we are human and we need to not have conditional relationships. We need to accept the other person 100% with all the entire package. When we are selective, I find that is when we bring judgment into it and ruin an otherwise very good relationship. Accept the whole person or whatever. Just as you are imperfect, the other person is too. And focus always on the strengths and find that happy place and follow Neville's 3 tips when you're angry. I think that was remarkably valuable. Don't send us your invoice, please. Thank you very much.
No, I'll take the invoice. You can send me the, no, you got
Carla, you are getting carried away.
Carla.
Carla was getting carried away.
I have to admit, yesterday I was very annoyed with a friend and I woke up in the middle of the night and I was about, okay, let's duke it out. Let's get, and something said, no, I gotta shut up, you know? And it was very interesting because I saw the shift happen. And I'm not going to throw the person out of my life. Thank you, Neville. I wanted to, but I ain't doing it. What are your final words, Jeanne?
Oh, I like the idea of breaking the cycle when we get stuck on the roller coaster of emotions. And what I've done, Neville, is when I'm talking to folks and I see that we're stuck, and usually it's when I'm doing a large group meeting and things aren't moving the way we want them to move, and you kind of get stuck. I actually made a group of senior executives stand up and do the hokey pokey, shake your hand, shake. I wished I'd gotten it on video.
Oh, you should have done.
The point that I made to them was, after we did all the shaking and stuff, I was like, do you feel that? Do you feel that kind of tingly feeling? That's your energy moving. So when you get like this, just move your energy around and change it. And then we ended up getting some really creative solutions coming out of that discussion. And I use that to this day. I was talking to a friend who was doing a lot of telephone work and, metaphorically slamming the thing down because, with earbuds, you don't slam the phone anymore. But she was expressing frustration. And I was like, stand up. And she said, what? I go, stand up. I go, okay, you've moved your energy. Now when you sit down, it's going to be a whole different experience. And it's just, for me, it's a simple way of affecting change for myself. Move the energy, breathe in new energy, breathe out, because if you call it emotion, I'll get stuck in trying to figure it out. But if I just call it energy, I'm allowing myself to just change it and move it. And I think that's how you process it. You don't let it stick with you. You kind of change the energy. You go, okay, I was angry. I'm not angry anymore. And you move forward. So that's how I've been balancing a little bit. I really believe we are emotional beings first, human beings second, and loving beings all the time.
And love is really our existence. So if we accept the love and let go of all that crazy emotions that go on, and maybe howl or quack like a dog or bark like a dog or meow. Sometimes my cat does that and I meow back at him and he looks at me and he meows and I meow. It breaks that cycle. And by breaking that cycle, then we can move on to manifesting what we really want. And with that, we are over more than we normally are over.
As usual.
Not as usual.
Oh, sorry.
Well, with you last night, it was more than I had expected. But with that, we are going to wave goodbye. And I want to mention that these two gentlemen will be speaking with me on the Global English Literacy Conference on November 7th. So tap into the conference. I'm so thrilled to have them with me. So we're going to wait. And remember, if you watch this show on YouTube, do me a favor. If you liked it, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't, give me a thumbs down. I don't care. And make a comment. Let's grow that channel. See, Jeannie, I remembered.
Good job. Good job.
We are going to wave goodbye and go off air.